Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds. Lawrence?
Welcome to the Crafter's Corner, the live stream that's all about taking a break.
The cultists of Great Cthulhu often worship him through depraved and orgiastic voodoo rituals, performed as an indescribably grotesque mask of naked human abnormality, braying, bellowing, and writhing in the moonlight.
That's what we should do.
To make time for creativity and crafting. Whether you're a wargamer, game master, RPG player, model maker, cosplayer, costumer, or creative crafter of any kind, you're welcome here.
And I always confuse Monet and Manet. Now, which one married his mistress?
Monet.
Right, and then Manet had syphilis.
They also painted occasionally.
Maybe you have a few hundred, or maybe a few thousand unpainted miniatures laying around your house. Now would be a great time to pick them up, grab a paintbrush, and a few bottles of paint. Let's get those miniatures painted, whether you just need that one perfectly painted miniature for your D&D character, a band of orcs to pit against your PCs, a custom warband for Frostgrave or Mordheim, or even a whole new Warhammer army. Let's get to work on it. And you know what? Now would also be a great time for a glass of your favorite beverage to enjoy while we work.
Captain Kirk, I thought Romulan ale was illegal.
One of the advantages of being 1,000 light years from Federation headquarters.
Or maybe you need some terrain for your table. No problem. Now would be a great time for cutting foam, flocking bases, scratch building something cool, and just painting something awesome. Not only will we have a good time here, but it just might make your next game night that much better.
To do this, we are going to need a greenstone idol of Cthulhu.
Yes, Ben, you may speak.
I can make it. I majored in art for a semester.
That's great, Ben. No special skills are necessary here, as long as we're having fun. That's all that matters. Maybe you've got a model that you want to build. Maybe there's a model of the Starship Enterprise or of a Klingon warbird that's still sitting in its box. Well, now would be a great time to open it up and see what it would take to get it done. Have you poured your drink yet?
What's that? This, my friend, is a pint. It comes in pints?
Oh. I can get you one.
What about cosplay? Need some extra time to work on your next great costume? Now is the time to break out the sewing machine, the fabric, the thread, crafting foam, and maybe even some warbler. That all sounds great to me. Let's see what we can create.
Human spider.
So grab your paints, brushes, thread, crafting foam, fabric, or whatever it might be that you need to create what you want to have for your next game session or your next convention, or maybe just what you need to have a little bit of fun tonight doing something creative.
I now do what other people only dream. I make art until someone dies. See? I am the world's first fully functioning homicidal artist.
Come on in for a bit of fellowship and camaraderie, because now it's time for the Crafter's Corner. Let's make something great.
My transformation into a deep one has finally begun. Father Dagon be praised.
Hello, everyone. Welcome this evening. I have not gotten nearly as much done as I would like to, but I'm trying to. I'm still trying to keep going. We'll talk more about productivity next week. But good to see everybody here. Look who we've got. Toadstool Hollow is here. Welcome. Jason is here. Good to see you, Jason. Stray is here. So we're here for a kind of chill evening, trying to paint up some miniatures. I've been working on these Hero Quest miniatures. I got what are those, ogres over here. I've also been working over here. I took a little bit of time to paint just some of the bookcases and things like that. So I'm trying to move on here, and I'd like to get this project done. So that's why I'm excited about sitting here working here. Bubba is here. Good evening. Robert says strawberry wine and Merlot. Sounds great. Fantastic. Jason's working on a Pinewood Derby collar. Fantastic. Hey, Draco and White Rabbit. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's so good to see you. So I am trying to get these Hero Quest miniatures painted because I want to be able to shoot the entire next season of Dinner and Board Game. I'm really I've been trying to think about how I actually get projects done here, and the biggest obstacle to getting Dinner and a Board Game underway again is getting these miniatures painted, because I really don't want to play Dinner and a Board Game, without having the miniatures painted. So the Barbarian Quest Pack is season 2 of Hero Quest. Season 2 of Dinner and a Board Game is going to be all about Hero Quest. So I already have the Barbarian Quest Pack painted. Working on the Elf Quest Pack right now. And also, I think we need to do some Advanced Hero Quest. Advanced Hero Quest is sitting over there. So I've got to get those miniatures painted first. And there may be there's some other things I got to do too. But right now, I just got to focus on getting these things painted, because I don't want to play that, to shoot that show with unpainted miniatures. So I'm going to be sitting here painting these with these speed paints. I'm very happy with the way that this technique is going. The slap chop method, I'm very happy with the way this is going. Now, one thing I don't have is the metallic speed paints. There are metallic speed paints now, so I'm just going to not paint anything that's metallic on these guys yet, and then see whether or not I'm going to be able to get some metallic speed paints in here, or if I'm going to have to paint the metallic areas more traditionally. We will just find out. But all right, so then tonight what we're going to be doing is taking a look at the table talk that I did with a friend of mine. His name is Chuck Bush, and he has been in the film industry for quite some time, and so we talk about basically independent film, which is a subject I'm interested in, film, web shows, that kind of thing, because, I had produced The Cultists independently. And actually, I would consider that it's Chuck that's a big reason about why I was able to do that. Chuck was hosting a series of workshops on film production and the technical side of film at a studio that was about 45 minutes from where I was living. And so when I saw that was going on, I was like, I gotta go over there. So I attended a number of workshops that Chuck ran on film, funding films, the more technical side of lighting films. We worked with the green screen setup. We worked with a bunch of things like that. And so I definitely learned a lot that I employed when I did the Cultist web show from Chuck. So he was a major influence there. I saw on Instagram where he had built a medieval city of Jerusalem in a high school gymnasium in order to shoot a film that he was doing that was about what's going on inside Jerusalem during the Roman siege of Jerusalem, actually on the day that the Romans broke through into the city. And so as part of shooting that film, I was looking at his Instagram and was like, oh my God, what have you built here? And he built this set of Jerusalem inside this gymnasium. And I was like, man, this is so fantastic. I would love to be able to do things like that, build those kinds of sets, either as a historical kind of city or as one of the fantasy cities that we talk about, like Waterdeep or something like that, or one of the there's fantasy cities that we're creating for one of our own worlds. I mean, I just thought that was so cool. That must have been a really neat project to work on. So we're going to go through that today. I think it was a really interesting conversation as we sit here and paint. What are you working on? I know we've got some people who are saying, like the Pinewood Derby car that Jason was talking about. Working on costumes, working on miniatures. What are you working on? Let me know in the comments. Be really cool. So I'm going to get us started talking to Chuck here. Oh, I should say that Chuck, he got his start in film in actually one of the ways that basically nobody does, which is basically accidental. He was just at a convenience store one day, and I forget who the director was, but the movie Fandango was being shot with Kevin Costner. Kevin Costner was starring in it, and they were trying to cast. They didn't have somebody for the character of Dorman, and then he was just the director walked into the convenience store, and he happened to be in there and was like, hey, wait a minute, you want to be in a movie? And then that's how he got his start. So I mean, that's pretty incredible, right? So that's how that happened. But I'm sure he'll tell the story here too. So I'm going to get us started there and see what's going on. Of course, comments, things like that, welcome. Let's just have a good time this evening. Let's talk about this. I'm going to move forward in our everyone to follow the game's act. Move forward just a little bit here to talk about Chuck here. We're going to get that going. Oh, I should get my crawler also going on the bottom of the screen as well. All right, so here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode of Table Talk. I have a very special guest with us tonight. His name is Chuck Bush, and he's been incredibly influential in my journey in all of the creative types of things that I've been doing, but especially in film and film production. I guarantee you that I would not have done The Cultists, which, we've shot the second season. That's going to be coming out soon. Or Dinner and a Board Game, if I hadn't attended Chuck Bush's workshops when he was running some workshops about 30 minutes away from my house on how to make films and how to actually make that work. So he is an incredibly important person to talk to with regard to both the creative side of making things, because that's what we talked about here on this show, both the creative and business side of trying to make what you want as a creative individual. So he's got a lot of talent in the creative side of things, but then also a lot of knowledge in the business side of things and how to actually make it make things happen. So I'm going to bring him on right now. Welcome, Chuck. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure, man.
So would you like to introduce yourself in the context of film and TV and being a creative person, and let everybody know what you've been involved in, what you've done, and what you're doing now?
Wow. Yeah, sure, man. I'll take a run at it because, talking about myself is my favorite sport. But hi, I'm Chuck Bush, and I'm an alcoholic. Oh, wait a minute. That's the wrong place. I'm sorry. I've been blessed enough to be making films since 1983 with a film called Fandango with a guy you probably never heard of named Kevin Costner. But since then, I've done, 12, 15 films and several TV series. Just finished writing the fifth screenplay that I've been commissioned to write. And working with another film on putting their budget together for them and their schedule breakdown. So that's kind of stuff I've been doing since 1983. I'll celebrate 40 years in this business in April of next year.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. So we've got, like I said, we've got two different elements here, the business and the creative side of making things. And I think that most of what we have to talk about is probably about the business side of how to get things done. If you're a creative, you've got ideas and how do you actually make it happen. But I want to start with a question about the creative side of things, because I pulled this off of your Instagram, because you were involved in a production that involved constructing a historical Jerusalem. Okay, so let me bring this up here because I've got this picture here.
Yeah.
In so many ways, I think that a lot of people who would be listening to this or who would be on the other channels would this is kind of a dream here. I mean, when I saw this, I was like, oh, wow, this huge environment, being able to construct this set that's like a historic Jerusalem, whether people are trying to replicate a historic environment like you were here, or whether they've got, a fantasy city that they're trying to construct for, their own show or something like that.
Right.
How did this come about? How were you able to do this?
Wow. Well, you know what? We were very fortunate. The gentleman I did this picture with was a fellow named Frank Schroeder. Frank was the producer and actually the director and executive producer of a film called The Pistol, about Pistol Pete Maravich. And Frank and some partners bought a first century set from Sibley, Louisiana, that was used to make the film Year One with Jack Black. And so we're looking at doing a feature film using, and in this film as well, even though there's practical set, we also used Unreal Engine, real-time compositing to composite, because you can see it's just three buildings. We wrapped green screen around this and then real-time composited the rest of the city behind this. And this is a proof of concept film called The Narrow Path. It's won so far 21 film festival awards, including Best Visual Effects. And so here, this is the set of Year One. Those are real stone pavers on the ground that we put on top of plywood, which you can see to the far right over here. You can see cans of paint on some of the plywood. And right by the lady's feet there, you can see plywood there. And this is all styrofoam. That's all styrofoam. The buildings are made of styrofoam. We had an amazing scenic painter, artist, kind of our production designer named Matt Whittle. And there's no way. I mean, you can put your eyeballs right up on that; it'll still look like blocks and not styrofoam. It's a great job. And we made this in 2022 with 100 extras in the middle of COVID in 2020. So that's what this is. So the film's called Narrow Path, and it's going to be out probably I would think spring of next year because it's run through the.
Hey, Lord Arathorn, good to see you. Good to see you. Stray's working on Dungeon 23. I'm wondering how that's going for lots and lots of people. Dungeon 23 would be a great thing to be working on right now.
Festival circuit now, and so that's that. But this is inside of a gym.
It looks like a gym.
Yeah, gym. It's not a sound stage, and it had all the challenges of being a gym because the electrical issues of having to plug straight into 3-phase power and having to bring in our own power distribution and those kind of things. But I'm very, very, very blessed to have been working with some of the same artisans. My director of photography for 10 years, my gaffer for 20 years, and they just came in and helped us make this happen.
How long did it take to construct this physical set?
This physical set was done on a volunteer basis, which I'm sure some of your viewers would like to know. And it took about a month. It took about a month because of all the prep work we had to do. I mean, we had to clean the gym floor, and because we didn't want to put plywood down on the floor on top of dirt, it would just scratch it up. So we had to clean the gym floor and then put the boards down, lay it out. We had draftsmen, we had graphic designers, we had excuse me, a team of, I don't know, probably 40, 50 people working in different aspects of getting it put up and getting it settled. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I'm
so
just
40 to 50 people over a month to create this.
We probably had 10 people on sometimes as many as 20, but at one time.
At one time.
And it took about a month to put it all together. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Well, like I said, when I see that and I think about like constructing, I know so many people who would want to be able to build out either historical or fantasy sets like that. Sure. And it just seems like the dream to be able to do it. And so, so you have actually made it happen. That is incredible.
So it was a team effort, man. It was a team effort. We had a lot of great people working on the show, and we shot the whole show in 4 days, 3.5 days really. And then we had a ton of visual effects work. It's a 15-minute film. We had 70 visual effects shots.
Because it's actually the siege of Jerusalem. It depicts the siege of Jerusalem.
That is correct. Not only the siege, but it's the day that the Romans break through and kill all kind of people. So yeah, and all the fire that we did in here, we couldn't burn anything in here. So all the fire is computer generated. All the buildings burning, computer generated. The smoke, that's all computer generated.
So 40 to 50 people overall, 10 to 20 people there at a time, 1 month to build, and you said shot in 4 days.
Yes.
Shot for 4 days worth of actual shooting.
Yep. And
very cool.
Another 3-4 days tearing it down because we had to be delicate.
Okay. Well, then let's go on to sort of the business side of how to make things happen.
Sure.
And one of the questions that I thought was funny that came up when I was talking to some of the cast and crew of the Cultists after, some of our shoots and stuff like this, we were just hanging around, is some people were wondering, or some people people commented like, I wouldn't want to be a producer. Like, why would you even want to be a producer? They want to be the actors. They want to be the directors, right? The director of photography. But I was the only one there who had this interested in being in the producer. So why be the producer, and what does that mean in order to get something like this off the ground?
Wow. Okay. Well, let me answer the first question. Why be a producer? If you have a story that you want told, there has to be a producer. So either you have to go convince someone to be your producer, or you have to. I became a producer because I knew I was the only producer who knew that I was a great director. So that's why I did that. And it all starts with the story. What's the story? What story are you telling? Are you passionate about the story? Because from firsthand experience, if you're not passionate about your subject, you might as well go home. Because anytime, I've made films for as little as $32,000. I shouldn't say I made them. I was part of films for as little as $32,000 and part of films as high as $14.8 million. And these things are true. There's never enough time and there's never enough money. I don't care what you're doing. So you have to be passionate about it, because if you're shooting 6 days a week for 6 weeks, it's exhausting. As a producer or director, you're the first person on set in the morning and you're the last person to leave. The only way you get through that is passion. The only way to raise money is passion. The only way to push through it and get things made is passion, because making films, making television, it's war. It's war. So you got to be passionate. You got to lead the troops and get things done.
Well, I think so. In order to make it happen,
yes,
like that's the reason to be the producer right there. I mean, that's how I kind of got into it. Is I was like, hey, I've got this idea, but if there's not a producer, it's not going to get done. So if you want to get it done, then you may have to step into that role, and that's the person who's actually going to make it happen.
Sure. Well, producers come in many flavors. There are people who are creative producers, and they find a story and they're passionate about the story, and so they try to enlist other people, directors or cast or crew. And then there are, but they don't want anything to do with the mechanics of the production. They just have a creative vision and they want to have creative control. Then you have someone who's like a line producer, and their whole job is the nuts and bolts of the day-to-day getting it done, dealing with the contracts to make sure the actors' contracts are correct and lived up to, making sure that.
Lord Alathorn asks, what brand of paint am I using? And right now for this project, I'm using all the Army Painter brand speed paints. I'm trying to come up with my methodology here to try to get whole boxes of miniatures done in something like a reasonable time. So I've been trying the slap chop method here. So here are some miniatures, for instance, that have are waiting to go to the actual painting phase. But what I've done, according to the slap chop method, is you spray prime them in black. So these were black spray primed miniatures. Then I did basically a heavy dry brush coating of a medium gray, and then I brushed them even more, dry brushed them, still not exactly lightly, but then I did another dry brush that was a lighter dry brush than the gray, of just pure white. So that gets me to this point right here. And then what you should be able to do is just put on the speed paints, and that's the actual painting of the miniature. But because you've got the black in the recesses, that gives you the shade. Most of your color is on the medium gray, and then you also have the highlights from the white. Theoretically, that'll work, and then you won't have to do anything else. So I'm trying to use this methodology, and right now I'm pretty happy with it. I like the way that I see these ogres going. I tried using Zenithal highlighting method for the Barbarian Quest Pack miniatures, and I didn't really like what happened. They're still reasonable tabletop quality, but they're about 2 major steps behind where I want to be, even for tabletop quality. So actually, I think this is what they call the slap chop method. And if you just look up slap chop on YouTube, you'll be able to find out what it is and go into more detail. That may be the right way to do to use speed paints and to get things done. I want to try something else with some Zenithal highlighting with the next box that I do, but we'll see. This seems to be working pretty well.
People are hired, making sure that there's toilet paper in the porta potty. I mean, all that stuff takes a mechanism, and that's what a line producer does. And then, of course, you have an executive producer, who's typically the person who is they're accountable to the investors for the money. Really, at the end of the day, the executive producer is the guy who gets in there and says, hey, this is how your money's being spent. This is why we're doing it this way. And, I know the schedule looks like we're 2 days over schedule, but we're going to work that out because we're going to fix this, and this, and it makes everybody happy and okay. So you have the creative guys who are strictly creative. You have the business guys who are strictly business, and then kind of the cross business technical guys who like to do it all.
Well, I was talking to another individual over lunch one day who was talking about trying to get films together, because he was also trying to get this. But he and it was a really interesting conversation, because he and I were kind of very different in this approach. Because when I think about trying to make something where it's been the Cultists or Dinner and a Board Game and all of that, I mean, it's definitely kind of in the trenches about how to get it done. But when he was talking about things, because I was like, he's trying to make this action adventure kind of movies and trying to make all these things happen. And I was like, well, who's going to make the suits of armor and this and how are you? And he was like, I don't know, because he was operating at a higher level than that. He was really trying to bring together, I got this IP, I want to make it happen with this actor. And he's really trying to connect things at a really high level. And like, who makes the costumes is really not something he was even like. No. He was going to hire somebody to do that. Like,
yeah, that's what you got to do. You got to delegate. You got to do a good job at delegating, and that's probably where they were at. Yeah, there are no shortage of things you can find yourself doing if you're making a film, and you really have to be a strong-willed individual to make things good. I was a line producer on a film, and when the film would wrap, we'd look at what was shot that day, and then I'd go to Sam's and buy all the craft services for the next day. And I'm getting in at 2:00 in the morning, having to be on set for 8:00, and that didn't work out good for very long.
You can't do that very long.
No.
You cannot do that very long. Yeah.
So, but again, you have to either be able to raise the money or do the work. One of the two. You if you can't raise enough money, then you have to wear multiple hats. But if you put a proper budget together and be disciplined enough to hold to that budget until you've raised all your money, not try to say, hey, we got half the money, we can shoot the movie, let's go shoot it, and worry about editing later. You can't do that. That gets you in trouble more times than not. So figure a good, solid budget. Don't skimp. Don't think, well, I can do this or do that. If I have to be the craft services guy, if I have to be the editor, if I have to be, that's fine. No, raise all the money you want to raise, and don't start. Be disciplined enough to not start until you raised all your money, because you either got to pay for it or you got to have experience and do it.
Okay, then let's say you have an idea in today's world.
Okay.
And I've talked about this with people who are from the traditional publishing, novel writing, and also game publishing. And now here we're talking about film or TV. You got this idea that you want to exist. And let's say there are basically two routes you can go. You can try to go a traditional studio route, or you can try to go an independent route.
All right.
How do you know when you're sitting there with your idea which route is right? And then what do you need to prep in order to go in either direction?
Sure. Well, if I may, I'd like to expand that a little bit more.
Okay.
Simply because, as you know, I'm a published author. And so, if you have a story to tell, the first thing you really have to do is dig deep and say, okay, what is the best means of getting my baby into the world? What is the best way to do this? Is it through a book? Is it through a graphic novel series? Is it through a movie? There's an old joke says, how many producers does it take to change a light bulb? Answer: does it have to be a light bulb? That's so it can be. Now if you say, okay, so now you decide, I think the world needs to experience my product, my story through film. The difference between a book and a film, just briefly here. A book, obviously it has pages, guys. I know that. So does a screenplay. So what? But a book is played out in the theater of your mind. A stage play is played out on a stage over there. A film takes you into the story. You are part of the story, which is why they have close-ups and wide angles and all those different angles. So if you have the kind of story that you think would be best told in somebody's thoughts and have a sphere of like your series, your different games and things, that has a very I think it lends itself to fantasy in terms of people putting their thoughts into what else is going on your game table. So in that case, maybe a book is the best thing, because they can impose their mind into the book, into the story. Whereas in a film, it's right there in front of you. You can't really add to it. You can't take away from it. All you can do is resonate with it or not. And so the process of deciding how it should come to an audience really should be determined by what you think is the best, because these are your story is like your child. What is the best way to present your child to the world? Is it in the written word? Is it in a movie? In a short series documentary? All these different things are ways of telling stories. You have to decide what's best for your baby, and that's what you do. It just takes time and contemplation.
I posted a video not long ago, or reposted it rather, to the main channel about like my philosophy behind YouTube commentary and trying to create something new, and we'll be doing scripted shows, and it's just YouTube commentary and that kind of stuff, just the new entertainment. And I think I originally shot that video about maybe 6 months ago or something like that. But I wanted to put it back out there, so it's on the channel now, on this channel now. Because, one thing that I was not taking into consideration when I recorded that, and certainly is not something that Chuck and I were thinking about when we were recording this conversation right here, was artificial intelligence. Because when I was talking about, well, gee, it's still very difficult to do scripted material, that was certainly true. That's even 6 months ago and things like that. That, well, it's very easy to do podcast type shows. It's very easy to do, discussion shows. I mean, like table talk, but we're doing right here. All of that is rather easy to do. It's still difficult to get a lot of people together to shoot some type of story, even if you're not having to create like fantasy costumes, even if it's a modern day kind of thing. You're not having to create fantasy costumes and sets and things like that. Even if you're just trying to do something modern day, that's still expensive. But it may be that we're about to turn another corner here. And I was thinking about that with trying to reevaluate the way I want to do things all last week. That, well, it may be that artificial intelligence and things like that all of a sudden are going to make creating scripted material much cheaper. Like that, it's possible. I think that could fall through the floor very fast. And if that's the case, we're about to see an explosion of human creativity on that side. So it may be just kind of an artifact of our technology, our technological progress for, some number of years when, okay, if you want to see something on something like YouTube or something, then what do you do? Well, it's going to be like a podcast style show or a video show. A video discussion or something like that is probably not going to be something that's actually scripted, that's telling you a story. I mean, obviously, when you think about the quantity of content, I mean, what is most YouTube content? It's mostly commentary. Somebody sitting at a computer like this, delivering some type of material. It's not some kind of scripted story that's going to be engaging, but that might change. That might change even here within the next 6 to 8 months. So I'm keeping my eye on all of that. I'm going to keep my eye very much on artificial intelligence and where that's going. We want to have a conversation about that on the Morning Grind. So it's possible that that's about to change, because if we can just drop to the floor, like the cost, I mean, it's really expensive to do a scripted show. If you got to get a whole bunch of actors together, you got to rent a studio, you got to rent all of the equipment, it's very expensive. So that's why, YouTube doesn't support that type of business model, right? You've got to generate a lot more material than what that would allow at a certain cost. But that could be changing. And I'm going to be watching that very closely. So we will also watch that together on things like the Morning Grind. All right, let's keep going. What I was bringing up, I wanted to share that a lot of we're going to talk about the business and the creative side, and we're talking about the creative side will be here on this channel. But that I also do let everybody know that I run a secondary channel called Heats and Business for Creatives. I'm going to skip that because that
valuable resource you have. You have created a very valuable resource, because people really, I'm very fortunate in the fact that I'm very right brain, left brain. I can separate the two, but not a lot of people have that. So the fact that you can present those to them, I would recommend that anybody go to your site and go through some of those videos, because they are invaluable.
Thank you. My philosophy has been very much to, blaze forward, but then leave a trail. So that's what I have been trying to do. I've been inspired by some other people who have in the past done blogs and things like that about the journey, their creative journey and stuff like that. Right. And I've derived great value from. And so was my thinking about creating that. And also I've created with the idea that if I were to create like a college level course on creative business, because a lot of professors or whatever are not actually deep in the trenches of doing stuff like that. But I had taught college in the past, and I was thinking, if I were supposed to teach a class on like creative entrepreneurship today, what type of materials would I need? And so that's kind of what I've been creating.
Oh, gee, I thinking about that now, even in the context of the past 6 to 8 months. If I were to teach that class now, man, that would even change since last I talked to Chuck. Man, that is a highly evolving kind of field to talk about.
Put on that.
That's fantastic.
On that channel.
Your audience should really take advantage of those.
Okay, so like when I was talking. So I was talking with Lou Anders, who is a novelist, a fantasy novelist. And I was kind of asking him the same question about, okay, you got this idea. Do you take it to traditional publishing or do you try to go independent? And, what do you need in either way? And we were talking about the importance of social media. And because he was saying, I asked him, if you're trying to be a novelist, do you focus on being a great novelist or do you focus on being great at social media? And he said it has to be both. Because he says that
it's a toss-up.
Yeah. He said it has to be both, because if you're trying to go the traditional publishing route, you've got to have a great novel, but then the agents today are going to be looking like, what's your social, how many people are following you? What are people looking at? And he was like, and if you go the independent route, then it's all about who, is following you and who knows about what you're doing and stuff like that. So it has to be both. What is that situation like in film?
Yeah, I got to tell you, it's really not that different. When it comes, first of all, if your movie goes through the studio system, number one, there's really one of two ways to go. They can distribute the movie that you make independently through their distribution mechanism, or they can buy your product. If you produce it independently and have them distribute it as a studio, count on $3 million right off the top going to their expenses. So whatever you plan to recoup, add $3 million to that, right? But it's the same for novels to me as it is in film. Do you want to control your own destiny? If you want to control your own destiny, go independent. Because if you go with a studio, if you go with a traditional publishing house, they're going to own your product. They're going to own your copyright, unless you're a big name brand author. And for you, if you're a great author and you're 4 or 5 novels in and you're a bestseller on all 4, then you can really start changing your terms. But when you're just right out of the box, I had a good friend who was the publisher of Thomas Nelson Publishing. He was the man. And I asked him because, I was getting ready to put out my first novel. I said, Dan, is this something I should go through a publisher? He said, Chuck, a traditional publisher is someone they're going to look to put $1 million worth of promotions into. And then you got to recoup that $1 million back before you start seeing real money coming in. Whereas if you do it yourself, you build your following. That, the second book I wrote was a book on self-publishing, how to be an independent publishing. And the first thing you do as you're writing is you're building your social media audience. And you're sending out little snippets and teasing people to get it out there, so that when your book finally comes out, you've got 120,000, 150,000 people out there that you've been working really hard to get, really hard to mine those people. And you know how hard that is firsthand. Something you taught me. And so, but still, if I'm selling my novel through a traditional publishing house, I'm going to see 5 to 7% royalty. Putting out my own book, I'm seeing 70% royalty. And not only that, but and I own it. At the end of the day, if I want to do an audio book, I get to do an audio book. If I want to call it, Tales from the Flip Side, I can call it Tales from the Flip Side. The publisher is not going to come in and go, well, that's a stupid title. Our marketing people think it should be called How to Code from the Flip Side, whatever. And they're going to change the title. You don't have that. Same thing in independent film and independent television. Whether your YouTube channel, whether you're, going out over, into theaters. I just had a friend of mine put out a film. He spent grand total tax title license about $750,000 and wound up, using some of that $750 to do marketing. And he was in 30 theaters in the southern region. and he did a special release on that Fathom Events, and he was in 649 theaters in 49 states. You know, what kind of release are you going to get from a major studio doing that? You're not going to get anything that big from such a small film. So by the time you're looking at doing and look, alluding to your business side, all right, let's be honest here. When you're making a film, the film that I just finished writing, it's got a preliminary budget of about $20 million. You got to look at the team and say, who on your team is worth $20 million? Do you have an actor that's going to garner $20 million at the box office? Is it a Steven Spielberg type director that people go see because it's him? If you don't have that person, then you're wasting your time trying to get even a $5 million film made through the studio system. I mean, think about it this way: the average budget of a Hollywood studio film is about $100 million. Okay, you, Joe Schmo, who've written a screenplay, your first screenplay, the odds of you being able to get a studio convinced to produce your movie at $100 million, even at $20 million, is slim to none. And it's not that it can't happen. Okay, shoot for the moon if you want to shoot for the moon. I mean, I walked into a 7-Eleven in 1983 and came out as a kind of lead role in that movie. Back over here, see that movie right there?
Yeah, all right. I was going to bring that up. You're one of the ones who had luck that something happened and then you got started. So yeah.
So I know it happens. I'm not trying to say it doesn't happen, but if you take the same amount of energy that you're trying to put into getting this film made at a studio level for even $50 million, if you put that into raising money and doing it yourself, you'll be far more successful.
Yeah, Robert says crowdfunding is a great route to gauge demand and build excitement, but having an independent platform on YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, etc. is a must, plus carrying on a conversation about your art. Yeah, my opinion is that you don't really want to use the crowdfunding campaign to gauge interest in the product. You need to go ahead and know that there is interest there before you run the campaign, because running the campaign itself can take a lot of work. I mean, when we would run stuff for Infinite Black, when we were doing the Elder Dice projects and things like that, I mean, those campaigns were not projects you wanted to undertake lightly. I mean, those running those campaigns, getting those campaigns set up and everything like that, even just getting it set up, I mean, that was months worth of effort. So, we didn't want to use that as, to gauge interest. By the time we went all of that effort and took the several months in order to create the prototypes and create the campaign page and all of that, we kind of needed to know already that people were interested in it. So that's kind of my philosophy. By the time, if you're going to go to all of the effort to set up a crowdfunding campaign, especially if the product, I mean, a lot of these products, take a lot of time, just even to get to the crowdfunding campaign. That there are probably better ways to evaluate whether or not you have demand or not, I think. Robert says, carrying conversation about what your art is and maybe what you see out there that works and what doesn't work. Reach for the stars and you may hit the sky, or the moon, right? Yep, that's the way it goes. Shoot for the stars or something like that, or shoot for the moon, you may still land among the stars. Yep, could be.
Have far more control.
I had people actually, you're talking about that, what I was talking to just a few weeks ago. And I think that in order to make things big things happen, you have to actually be actively working on it. That it's possible maybe out there that you've got some people who things just accidentally happen for, but I think in order to make something happen, you have to actively be working on it. That seems to be the way that it seems like to me.
And you actually have a chance of seeing it happen. And that's what it's all about, right? Because the greatest wishes and thoughts are not going to do you any good if your film never gets made. So there's that.
Okay, well, there are a couple of different ways that I could go off. Actually, let me go this direction, because I got two
major lines of thought, but let me go with this one. Let me rerun some of our thinking, or my thinking, that had happened over here on this side.
Okay.
And what's been going on. That way we can kind of talk through this.
Sure.
Because I was in the company Infinite Black, which is a partnership with a fantasy cosmic horror artist, David LaRocca. And we were developing, the intention was to develop a couple of different worlds. And he put in his world and I put in my world, and we were going to be 50-50 on this. And so the idea was IP development for, for these worlds. And for different reasons, like so there are many different ways you could go if you're going to try to develop IP, for these different fantasy worlds. I had been thinking, well, okay, we need to develop YouTube channels, we need to develop followings for the different worlds, which is no small task, but that which is no small task. But on the other hand, he was like, okay, do we need to do all of this? Do we need to be doing YouTube channels? Let's figure out what pitch materials we need to create, and then let's go straight to a studio and try to just bring it straight to them. So I did research, and I even talked to you about, okay, well, if I'm going to do that, what type of materials do I have to create?
Yeah, pitch deck.
A pitch deck, some type of the scissor reel.
Yeah, the sizzle reel, story arc.
Yeah, the sizzle reel of that. So, and I said, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. Like, if you want to, if David, if you want to go that route with this world, we got both worlds, at the time, his and mine.
Right.
Like, well, it would be an interesting thing to try. That we'll try one route with one of them, and we'll try the other route with the other one. And David wants to go let's just get together the pitch materials and let's just try to go straight to whoever, versus trying to do something, I guess I would say organic, in the development of a social media, and then try to see what happens.
Yeah,
so those are two different strategies.
Yeah.
I'm hesitant. See, my thinking was that if you show up, like let's just say you could do it. Let's just say you show up at Netflix or whatever to make your pitch. You're going to be one of 1,000 people with that same pitch. And one of the things that could make you stand out, is not because everybody's, at least in my opinion, or it seems like, is to say the vision here is amazing. The cinematography is going to be this. The story is going to be whatever. But it seems to me like if you're talking to somebody who's going to give you, supposed to give you $50 million, $70 million, something like that, that actually what they want to hear is, I got 100,000 people who love this, and they want to see this movie.
Yeah.
That's a more
sure.
So even if you're going to try I want to go straight to a studio. It seems like the most effective. It seems like to me, because I am not in this world, but it seems like the most effective pitches in that direction would be ones that were augmented by a large group of people and social media presence who loved what you were doing.
Yes, there has to be, and when I say this, you're going to go, oh my God, he's saying it again. It's called show business, not show art. So at the end of the day, whether it's a studio investment, whether it's private equity investment, whether, unless it's completely crowdfunded, someone's going to look at it and say, okay, how am I getting my money back? How's it coming back to me? Well, we have Denzel Washington in our film, and the last 3 Denzel Washington films grossed, $350 million worldwide, or whatever the number is. I don't know if he may be more popular than that. But then they can say, okay, so now we're hedging ourselves against the track record of a Denzel Washington. And that goes back to who's the $20 million guy? Who's the guy that's done films at that level that is going to be responsible with the investor's money? Who's the guy at that level that's made that kind of money back? If you don't have that, then, how do you expect someone to give you that money? It doesn't happen. It's not going to happen. Not going to happen. So I'll tell you then, if you don't mind, I was very fortunate enough to have a copy of the pitch deck from Stranger Things.
Oh.
And I got to tell you, they leveraged.
I would love to see this to see what actually sold Stranger Things. I would love to see that.
Sci-fi audiences.
Be right back.
They took, because their show is set in 1986. They took popular shows of the 80s, films of the 80s, like Firestarter like Close Encounters, like E.T., and they looked at them stylistically and kind of broke them down into why they were successful. And then in their pitch deck, they said, this is why our show is going to be successful. Because, you know, and they put still frames, still images of E.T., still images of Third Counter, and third what's it? Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And that look is exactly the look that Stranger Things has kept for the underneath, the upside down, rather. It's called the upside down, right? That's the exact same look they have for the underneath. So, or the upside down, sorry. So it was that compelling pitch deck combined with the fact that of historical value that these science fiction films had garnered that got them the deal. Right? Now, if you had people attached to it that had never really done anything, that, you know, the Duffer Brothers had not made other projects before, then the veracity of what they brought to the table would not be as compelling for a studio to say, yes, we have to do that. And that's the other thing, is you have to have a great pitch deck full of substance, a little bit of sizzle, but full of substance. But then you have to have the people behind the deck to back it up, to say, yes, we've done projects at this level. We've been successful at this level. Because again, show business, not show art. People want to understand how the money's going to be spent. They want to be comfortable that it's going to be spent properly, and that they're going to, at the end of the day, that they have something to put out.
Okay, let's talk about developing then independent film or web shows or things like that in the context of the broader environment in which we can create it. Because of course, doing something independently means doing it yourself, like, you know, all yourself. And that means all yourself.
Sure.
And I was talking to Paul Chatto, who was on the Call Me Chatto channel, and he was a former, I believe it was CBS executive.
Yeah.
And, you know, and he's been very interested in, of course, infrastructure in film has a certain meaning, but like I would say infrastructure, but environment that we create for these things. Because, like, for instance, if you do a major movie through a studio, then you can go on Entertainment Tonight. You can send your star Entertainment Tonight for marketing and things like that. And so, as I've been trying to do these things as well, I've also been aware of, in the different industries, the environment and all of these ancillary things that exist. Because are you going to do it yourself, or are you going to be existing in some kind of network? Right. And it seems to me that the independent film or web show sort of thing is a bit sparse on those kinds of ancillary industries. Like, I don't know what, I think he's right. This is Paul Chatto when he says, I don't know what the independent Entertainment Tonight is.
Right. Right. Well,
how do we fix that? Like, what is that situation, and how do we fix that?
Well, golly, you know, there's a lot to that. And that's why I said earlier about putting a product out through a major studio mechanism, even if you produce it independently. You know, that's a deep question. How do I start? Okay. Ever hear of a film called Paranormal Activity? Okay. How much did that film cost to make?
Oh, I don't know.
$14,995. $14,995. Do you think that a studio made that film?
No.
You know, what a studio did is they found that film at a festival, invested another $1 million into it, beefing up the sound, just like the Blair Witch Project, and wound up putting it out under their banner after buying it from the original creators. Now, if I've got $14,995 into my movie, and they say, you know what, we'd like to buy this movie for $10 million. Do you think I'm saying no?
No, you say it's yours.
Where do I sign? Yeah, I
right.
mean,
it's yours.
And this is true. Great product rises to the top. A good friend of mine, Mark Ilsley, directed a film called Paris, Texas. I'm sorry, Happy, Texas. My bad. And he sent it out to agencies to cast. And he went for sort of the mid-level actors, but it was a really great script. And what his sales agent said, he said, go put it at these agencies, tell them it's already funded, All right, don't tell them it's not good because they won't take it serious. But if you tell them you got the money, it'll get into the agency, and next thing you know, he's got what's his name? Well, Ali Walker was in the movie. Who's the actor in Shameless? I can see his face. I can't call his name. Bill. Anyway, famous actors got into his movie because they turned the script in, and the agencies said, "Wow, this is a great script," and kind of moved it up the ranks until the actors were reading the scripts, going, "You got to get me in this movie." All right, that's the same thing that happens with Paranormal Activity, with El Mariachi, the first film done by I can't call his name. All these great movies, great product, go to the top of the food chain. All right, I'm not saying it can't happen, but at the end of it, and look, just the fact. I mean, Fandango. I was discovered in a 7-Eleven. And they used that story to leverage, me getting an article in People magazine and all that kind of stuff because it was out of the ordinary. The same thing with Paranormal Activity. This small independent film shot on home DVD recorder. The same with Deep Blue Sea, was it? One of them was Open Water. It was Open Water.
Open Water. Okay.
On mini DV, and then transferred to film. Just those things are enough of a mechanism to get you involved in Entertainment Tonight and the late shows and all those kind of things. That's how that happens for the independent filmmakers. You got to do something different. You got to make a splash. There's some guys out there, in addition to yourself, that have business blogs and things for the film industry. I think one's called Indie Mogul.
Mm-hmm.
And he's out there doing the same kind of stuff, and he'll say the same thing to you. He'll say the same exact thing. But that's been my experience, is doing small budget films that have some kind of a twist or turn that makes it unique, that's going to get publicity. But you still, what's wrong with Facebook? What's wrong with TikTok? What's wrong with Instagram and getting product out there? YouTube, how many active millions of users does YouTube have every day? Why can't you get out there and drive traffic yourself as an independent producer? Because here's the thing. If I make a film for $10 million, I got to make $10 million back. But if I make a film for $50,000, I only got to get $50,000 back. So if you want to be on the big hoity-toity programs, that's your ego talking, right? This is budget city. If you take $50,000 of investors' money and you bring them back 50,000 plus a little percentage, you'll make films for the rest of your life. Because that's what, and then every time you just go a little higher, next film may be 100, next film may be 500,000. You keep setting it up so that you have a path to success, and investors will beat the.
I don't think it was quite my point that we had to be on the big hoity-toity shows. I think that the idea was that, okay, if you have a large budget film, then you can get on the Tonight Show. And that's part of your marketing apparatus. That whole external structure is part of your marketing apparatus. But on the independent side of things, we don't really have that apparatus. Like, where do we watch on YouTube? Like, if we're sitting here hanging out on YouTube, where do we go to see, to hear from the actors or the directors or the producers of the coolest independent sci-fi or fantasy show that's going to be dropping on YouTube this week? Like, I don't know where we go and do that. Like, maybe somebody does. And if you do, please let me know, because I would love to. Maybe I have just missed it. But I'm not sure that, like, is there something that everybody who loves science fiction and fantasy is watching, and that, their host and they bring on, they're promoting whatever is dropping this week in the world of sci-fi and fantasy or geekdom in general shows. We don't have that independent infrastructure, which is what I was kind of talking about here. I think that's what I was talking about. Like, I don't think that you need to get an independent show on actually Entertainment Tonight. I'm just wondering what the equivalent of that is. Now, maybe I bring this up in this episode. Maybe I do, but I think I know where it was supposed to be. Does anybody here watch Film Threat? Does anybody here know Chris Gore and Film Threat? Like, I have this feeling that the place that we were supposed to go
because of the history of Film Threat magazine and independent film and things like that, that was supposed to be Film Threat, that we were all supposed to be watching Film Threat for reviews of independent stuff. Now, that's larger than just the geekverse, I would say. I mean, that's movies in general. Now, of course, depending how you want to define it. But, but because they do all different kinds of genres of independent films, but and web shows and things like that. But it might actually go to show you that it's not something that can quite be, maybe it's not a sustainable model, because Film Threat has changed, and what it does on its YouTube channel and the kinds of stuff that it covers has changed a little bit. I follow that. And, actually, I haven't watched a lot of Film Threat in several months. I need to go back and check in on it, because it hasn't been something that I've watched in a while, because they did a shift sort of on their YouTube channel, their YouTube coverage toward more mainstream stuff, right? They cover a lot of Star Wars. They cover a lot of whatever, show is on Disney Plus or whatever stuff. And that's probably because, like, Chris Gore got big on YouTube because he did a series for the YouTube show Film Courage, a YouTube channel, Film Courage, when he was talking about Star Wars. And I enjoyed those videos that he recorded for them as well. And of course, they went to a couple million views or maybe more, something like that. But then when you went to Film Threat, what was Chris Gore talking about? He was talking about independent film. And I think he realized, hey, wait a minute. What did people really like for me to talk about? It was Star Wars. People know me as the guy who, shot these Star Wars films. And then I go on other people's YouTube channels and they want to hear me talk about Star Wars. And I talk about Star Wars and things like that, and those get views. And then over here on the Film Threat channel, well, I talk about some independent show or something like that. And then it doesn't have the same audience. And so it seemed like this was maybe a transition, maybe a year ago or a little more or something like that, when it was like, all right, we're transitioning here and we're going to start talking about more mainstream stuff. Now, I think they do still cover independent stuff, but I think that was a market change. I would love to talk to him about that sometime. Stray knows Film Threat. Film Threat is cool, Stray says. So I would like to talk to him or Alan about that. I really would. I wanted to talk to Chris Gore about starting Film Threat in general, because it seems like a really interesting story as far as being a creative entrepreneur and being a creative person goes. Getting that magazine started sounded like a really interesting story to me. And I know he's trying to do a documentary about it, but I don't even think that documentary is out yet. But maybe when that documentary is out, maybe I'll invite him. And maybe he might come on the show. I don't know.
Go down to get to you. Well, experience.
Can I push back a little bit?
Please.
And give you an alternate side of that? Okay. So when you say, hold on?
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So when you say, can you go onto YouTube and drive traffic yourself? Okay. It seems like a general idea that you could. Are you familiar with Film Threat?
Yes.
Okay. So well, I guess I'm about to say the same thing right here. It seemed when we talked about being an independent producer, and that means that you have to do everything yourself.
Yeah.
It's extremely time consuming and capital intensive, but also time consuming to say, I'm going to bring out this 10 episode web series, or I'm going to bring out this independent movie. And you spend a lot of time doing that to the best of your ability.
Right.
But then when you also look at something like YouTube, and I've got videos on this where people are talking about what's recommended on YouTube. And if they're talking about, well, in order to drive YouTube traffic, in order to attract a following, you need to be producing 2 to 3 YouTube videos a day, but not more than 6, because then the algorithm punishes you. Well, if you're trying to do a show, you can't do 3 YouTube videos a day.
Right.
So that's not happening. So even if you do the best 10 episodes you possibly can, if the algorithm wants 3 videos a day, you're not going anywhere. So, one possible answer to that is, okay, well, then that means that not only do you need to produce your 5 major shows, but you also need to produce all of what I was calling the Entertainment Tonight kind of material, all of your marketing material, which might be hundreds of videos.
Sure.
So if somebody just says, well, just go to YouTube and get your own traffic, I would say that's the problem that's confronting an independent producer.
Right. But you might want to also consider the value add. What's the value add? Well, let's say you've got your cultists, right? And so you got episodes of your cultists. I think what would
Thank you, Stray. Stray says these pieces are looking good. I think they are looking really good. I'm really impressed with this technique. I'm going to try to do something to help speed along the prep work, because this is the fun part. I'm having fun sitting here, putting on the color, because you get a good result, and then, I mean, we're coming to something really good here. I think. I wish that it didn't still take quite as long to do both dry brushing applications. I wish it didn't take quite that long. So maybe there's still something we could do with some spray paints to try to at least maybe reduce one of the passes with the dry brush or something like that. But nonetheless, yeah, I really think that this is a really good technique. Thank you, Stray.
Help you is to do as many behind the scenes of the cultists and cast side interviews and put those on the channel, because if people aren't interested in the cultists, maybe they're interested in the behind the scenes making of a YouTube show. You know, so now you've doubled your opportunity to capture a market, and on down. There's a channel, and you and I have talked about this channel. It's called Dust on YouTube. Dust is an aggregator of sci-fi oriented short films, and they have, I think last time I checked, about 6.5 million subscribers and hundreds of shorts. And I subscribe to them just to learn what they do well. And I get a notice about one short film every week. They're putting out one a week, but they're doing things like, you know, when I put my website up, my web host, I got $500 in Google Ads vouchers. You know how much play you can get from $500 of Google Ad vouchers? And I want to sell a product on my Cajun Cooking Network channel. First thing I put up a lot of crawfish. But once that gets their attention, then you know, I'm spending $100 a week on Facebook, and I'm getting 5 figures of people going through my site. Now, of course, you understand the metric. You can drive traffic there. If you don't have anything to keep them there, then that's the other side of the business, and I'll leave that to you who know much more than I do. But getting traffic there can be done. It just takes consistency and playing to an audience. Finding your audience, that's difficult. But once you got them, man, you can play to them. You can play to them real easy.
With Film Threat, I talked to Chris Gore about the cultists, and you know, and he's got, of course, there's the Film Threat website, and there's the Film Threat YouTube, specifically the YouTube channel. Sure. And when Paul Chatto was talking about there needs to be an independent entertainment tonight, my mind immediately went to that's what Film Threat should have been. You know, Film Threat was supposed to be an independent kind of thing. And when I talked to Chris Gore, and it might be on video or not, he was like, I don't know what to do with YouTube. I don't know what people are looking for, because we put stuff up, but that wasn't. And I noticed that he's changed in the past maybe 3 or 4 months. Like they're talking about a lot more mainstream movies like Star Wars. They're talking about Star Wars, and they're talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi and stuff like that. Yeah, because I think. I don't know, but think that, okay, well, they've been trying to get the Film Threat YouTube channel off the ground and talking about independent film and talking about, talking to independent viewers. That clearly didn't drive it. But then they started talking about Star Wars. Okay, well, then now they've got a lot more people coming in and showing up their live shows.
That's a beautiful color.
Like why can't they do the big shows and then do an indie corner? Right?
Well, I still think they're promoting people on Fridays and things like that. But to me, it was a looking at what happened, because I understand why, if you're trying to grow a YouTube channel, do you want to talk about people's independent films, or do you want to talk about Star Wars?
Right.
Obviously, you talk about Star Wars.
Not a hard choice. Not a hard choice.
Right. Not even a choice. And I've talked to, or I've talked, provided commentary on people's channels when they've been talking about people with large YouTube channels who've been very upset that people are not talking about them. That there be channels who are very critical about the mainstream stuff that's coming out, but yet they don't champion and promote other stuff. And I think there are very good reasons for that, which have to do with human nature and the algorithm and things like that. But I thought that, because I really want to talk more with the Film Threat guys about what's happened, that like
it sounds great to say, let's make an independent entertainment tonight. But then do people show up for it? And it might be that they are an example of that they tried it, and the lesson is no, people don't.
Yeah, it could be. Someone once told me that was involved with a very big media company, said, Chuck, there are 1 million people out there that like something. You just got to find them. There's 1 million people out there who want to see stuff about independent production, but you got to get to them. They're not just laying around for the picking. You got to find them. But look, man, it sounds to me like we have an opportunity. If there's no independent entertainment tonight, then we should do one.
Well, that's what one of the ideas, because maybe I have to do that. And I do. That was on my list, my show list. And like I said, I'm trying to work my way through here. So I've got tons of projects to work on, but I think I have a potential way to do that show. I don't know if it really should be done, but I've got a way to potentially do an independent entertainment tonight show on a reasonable budget. So it's not on the short list of things to do, but it was on that longer list of potential shows. Oh, hey, Retro Nerd Girl. Great topic tonight. Hey, maybe we could co-host an independent entertainment tonight. Maybe that's what we should do. Because I do have to get more shows going faster. Thank you. I think this was a great conversation too. I think this was a great conversation with Chuck, and an important one. I think an important one in the creative community. When I heard Paul Chatto talk about this, and then he had a lot of ideas that I responded to on the Business for Creatives channel because they were more business oriented. Sure. And I know you're in that industry, and I haven't been able to talk to the Film Threat guys again. But I feel like there's a large number of people out there on, for instance, YouTube specifically, since we're on YouTube, which can be very critical. And of course, that's completely valid. It's completely valid. I don't want to invalidate it at all, because you can completely say, I'm going to be a critic of mainstream stuff and, potentially not like mainstream stuff, and be critical. Oh, did I lose Chuck? Uh-oh. Oh, okay. No, there. Okay, there you go. I'm sorry. I thought I lost you for a second. But I was going to say that you could be critical of mainstream stuff, and there's no problem with that. And there are a lot of people who have managed to create very large audiences based on that. And that's, of course, if you're creating a critique channel, then more power to you. That is fantastic. I salute you. But there seems to be enough people who have noticed. Oh, Stray says, I would love to see you guys work together, talking about me and Retro Nerd Girl. Well, maybe so. Maybe we'll think about that. Like I said, there's so many shows to produce, and I'm way behind in all of my production. But that's one of them. I've got some people that we could invite on who have produced independent shows, at least to do a pilot. At least try to do one pilot. As I say, if you can get to one pilot and you can get one show done, then it becomes easier to do more. Hey, Sam, good to see you. So all right, we'll think about that. We'll think about that. That we need something that is also constructive. I made a mistake when I was talking to some people and said something about we need to be positive, but I actually didn't mean positive. Excuse me. Because, if you watch something and you don't like it, then by all means be negative. But I'm somebody who is creating stuff. You're somebody who's creating stuff. There are other people who are creating stuff. So I think the better word is constructive. We should be constructive to create the things that we want to create, rather than just being negative about the stuff that we don't like.
Yes. Well, Heath, I think you'll find that the people who are negative are no talent slouches who feel like, people that are doing better than you don't criticize what you do. People who are working harder and doing better things don't criticize people who are just trying. It's the people who don't do it who have issues. It's easier to just be a troll than it is to say, hey man, liked your story, but I didn't like your choice of the lead actress. There was really no chemistry. Next time try this. Nobody has the intestinal fortitude the chutzpah to step up and say, hey, try this, man. I liked your stuff. Everybody's like, it's like TikTok. Oh, you're fat. This beautiful girl. Oh, you're fat. You're too old. You should never be on the channel. Well, that's, anybody can be a troll. It takes a human being with intelligence to be a good constructive critic.
Yeah. I don't want to write off. I wasn't talking about people who are critical of me specifically, because I don't want to write off that group as like no talent or just trolls, because you can produce a YouTube show that's of incredible high quality that people love, that happens to be critical of mainstream stuff.
Yeah.
Like, so that's wonderful. And so when you say here's an independent show, they're just like, legitimately, we don't look at that, because we've got an audience. They want to hear how we don't like Star Wars and Star Trek. So all of our videos that we've got to produce are about how we don't like Star Wars and Star Trek. And
right.
So there's something, the algorithm, human nature, the audience, what people expect. So, as far as they could be incredibly talented about creating a critique show.
Right.
But that doesn't drive new stuff. So it may have to be something separate. It may have to be something different, because I understand that if you develop an audience who is looking for you about how you don't like Star Wars, you don't like Marvel or something like that, and then you turn around, the next video that you put out is how much I like this independent show,
right?
That your audience will react negatively to that, and they'll even leave. So
yeah.
I understand why there are reasons why they can't do that. That's why I'm not critical of them specifically. I'm critical of the system that we're in, and how do we systematically break that? Like what do we need to do in order to actually facilitate that ecosystem that Paul Chatto was talking about for independent productions? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It does. And I think, Heath, that is something that you certainly would have, I think, a big part in, because in my mind, you really kind of went after and broke the mold in crowdfunding for your board games. I really think you went out and thought a little bit outside of the box. The answer is use the mechanism for what the mechanism is good for. We do a lot of branded entertainment shows for people like Discovery and that kind of stuff. And we put our stuff on their network. We pay to be on their network because they're good at gathering eyeballs, but they're not good at budgeting a show. I can do a show for $60,000 that they would take $300,000 to do, because that's kind of their mechanism. That's where they make part of their money. So if we're using branded people, like in a car show that we did, we had Wildwood Brakes was one of our sponsors. We used their product on the show. We had an allowance we got from them, but we owned the show at the end of the day. So what the channels were good for was eyeballs. They weren't good for production. In the same way, you need to use the mechanisms that are good for you. If it's YouTube or what have you, use that mechanism in a way that don't try to make that mechanism do something it doesn't do. So that's just kind of my thinking. And the other, by the way, the name I couldn't remember the actor was William H. Macy.
Oh, I love him. Okay,
yeah, that was stuck in that. I'm calling him Bill because but his actor name William H. Macy. And another thing is, YouTube responds well to product that you put uploading, shows that you're uploading, but they're also very big on promoting, driving traffic to your YouTube. So the more traffic you drive, the more they move you up in the algorithm, which is something for your audience to consider.
Well, and what I've been trying to do here, on this channel, we've got the creative side of things, but I didn't, because there was like a whole flame war and stuff like that, which is what I was kind of, the people who are the critical side, and the people are saying that, like, you don't promote anything. I mean, you talk about how much you hate stuff, but you don't talk about, here's what. So here on this channel, at least, we're trying to be constructive, talking to you who are doing independent things. I'm talking to other people, Tuesdays and on Thursdays on this, about people who are creating things, independent people on Sundays when we're doing the general geekdom show. I didn't want that to happen over here. That here, I'm also a believer in not only leaving the trail, but taking people with you.
Yeah.
If you're going, you can't do it alone.
Nope.
So you take all these people with you,
Yep.
And you find out who is kind of at your level, and then you all go.
Right.
And nothing would make me happier, like absolutely, completely, literally. I mean, nothing would make me happier is if I got to the end of my journey and there were a dozen, 2 dozen, whatever of the core people who had been part of this, who were also had every bit of success that they had wanted at the end of the journey too.
Sure.
I want to take people with me, and I want to bring people up behind.
That's the stuff, man. That's the stuff. That's the marrow of life.
It is. That's
Interestingly, I talked to somebody else about that a few months later, and that person told me to give all that up.
Hopefully, as we go, because like I said, if we're thinking about that, and if there are a group of people who are thinking about the ecosystem, let's find.
Oh, okay. Well, Stray. Okay, Stray's in. All right. So yeah. All right. Stray. Okay. Yes, you can come along too. So Stray can be part of that. The people who want to come along, then I think we can make things happen. But the pushback I got on that from the other person was from somebody else was like, well, sometimes people don't want to go with you, and that you outgrow some people and they don't grow with you, and so you have to be willing to leave to leave those people behind. That was the perspective that person had.
That network,
sure,
that supports that. I think that's really important.
Yeah, yeah, and you can find it, or you can start it. You can nudge it. I have a guy here in town who's trying to build a virtual studio, meaning that it doesn't exist anywhere, but it exists everywhere. So he's working toward that with different folks in different phases of filmmaking, being able to, art directors or what have you, editors, colorists, that can be anywhere in the world. We do some stuff now with some folks in Korea. Just because a friend of mine just opened a visual effects studio, I think I want to say Cambodia. Labor's very inexpensive. The artisans are very trained, very focused, and they get everything from high-speed internet and done. So that can happen. It's amazing what happens when people of like mind put their egos down and help other people.
And that should be what the internet's facilitating. Like when the internet is its best, that's what it should be facilitating.
Yep.
Would you like to tell everybody, because we're coming up on an hour here, but would you like to tell everybody where they can find you on social media and what your current materials are and things like that? Because I do have the links down below, but you want to tell everybody where they can find you?
Well, I'm on Facebook, Chuck.Bush.247 on Facebook. My visual effects production company is Audacious Effects, which is at Audacious Effects on Facebook. But if anyone wants to reach out, welcome everybody that wants to reach out. Hit the links, but also, ping Heath, not Keith, ping Heath, and he'll connect us, because anything that comes through the show, I'd like him to be a part of it. I mean, he's somebody who's worthwhile working with.
Thank you so much for being here with me tonight. I think this was a very important and productive conversation.
Thank you. I'm old hack, man. I appreciate you having me.
A constructive conversation, and that's the kind of thing that I like doing here. A constructive conversation for people who are interested in the creative and business side of trying to make something happen in today's world. So hopefully. All right. Thank you, everybody. We are out of here.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate you having me.
All right. I think that was a fantastic conversation. I hope everybody enjoyed that one. If you didn't catch that one live, that one was shot a few months ago, but I think it still has a lot of relevant to say. Hey, Gundam. Hey, this was a fantastic. You came in here right at the end of that conversation, so I would go back and I would start this one over, because this one was a really important conversation on the state of independent creativity in general, film, web shows, that kind of stuff. Creativity today on the internet, how we can do this, what's working, what's not. I thought it was a fantastic conversation. So that was important. In fact, I like going back and listening to these things, because when you're in the middle of a conversation like that, sometimes
I try to do the best I can listening to the person who I'm talking to and then responding and stuff like that. But, I found that it's actually nice to listen to the conversation again, sometimes a few months after, it's happened like this, and be like, oh, we talked about this. I didn't even remember this person said this, or some kind of project they were involved in. Almost every time there's something like, oh, yeah, man, I forgot they said that or had reference to something like this. So it's good to come back to and listen to again for me. So I'm really enjoying it because I'm like, all right, now, given what, what's changed in the last 6 months, is there something this person mentioned that I was like, oh yeah, I had completely forgotten about that. That is so important. So I have been sitting here working on painting up these Hero Quest miniatures, these the Elf Quest miniatures. And I've been like, these are these the bad guy elf guys, and they've got these cloaks on there, and so I've got these green cloak and the purple cloak. It's like I said, I want each one to be identifiable. Here's a red cloak, and then also a blue cloak. So if you're talking about Elven Archer, which Elven Archer? Oh, the blue one. Oh, the purple one, from the perspective of gameplay. So putting those down, they look really good. I was just about to start some of the Elven warriors, the bad guy Elven warriors, but didn't get to start that. Lots of brown though, because there's lots of furniture. So this is going pretty well, though. I still do have the Queen Sinestra herself over here that I have got to paint. And then the elf. This is a male elf, actually, because the female elf is in the main Hero Quest box for the second printing that just came out. So I've still got lots to sit here and paint. But this is fun. This is fun. Putting the color on like this and seeing instant results is so much fun. So Gundam says, I've just been working on a business pitch for a pizza business. Interesting. Oh, well, that's very interesting. Well, you might want to listen to this, though. I don't know. Maybe it has, probably elements of it probably have something to do with this. Raven Keep Slices. This is my fifth business pitch idea. Fifth pitch or fifth business. So trying to fifth pitch to try to find one. Eventually, you're going to find the right thing. Hey, Mike. Good evening, everyone. Late for the show. I'll catch the rewind. I like the idea of doing them up in different colors. Good to see you. Good to see you, Mike. Yep. Trying to make them distinguishable on the tabletop, because at the end of the day, these are tabletop pieces. And also, especially if they're going to be on camera. And I don't know what type of camera I'm going to be using for that show. But it would be nice if the camera were picking up. I'll use a different camera than this one right here, but it would be nice if the camera were picking up the different colors. So if we're playing the game, you could at least point that out and see that. All right, everybody. So yeah, if you just came in late, I highly recommend you listen to that conversation. It was a fantastic conversation with Chuck. Deals with the entire state of independent creativity online today. So and a lot of our philosophy here on this channel. It was so great talking to everyone tonight. We will be live on the Morning Grind tomorrow. We will talk about the Book of Vile Darkness. I've got the Book of Vile Darkness scheduled for tomorrow. And I will see everybody later. Everybody have a fantastic evening, productive evening. I know tomorrow's Monday.